Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you today with an article from Breitbart. When is this dated? It is dated October 30th. So I'm recording this a few days later. And I've seen a lot of stuff out there in the news reported that this man right here, that would be Benjamin Netanyahu, the current prime minister of Israel, um, that he created Hamas and stuff like that. And well, here's a fact check that will prove that wrong, and I think it's important to get this information out there. So article title says, fact check, false claim that Netanyahu created Hamas seeks to explain intel failure. Because as we know, people have been asking, how did all of those Israelis get massacred? And their intel agencies did not see this coming. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. So the claim is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is responsible for creating and supporting Hamas to thwart a Palestinian state. And the verdict is mostly false. Netanyahu did not create Hamas, but Israel misjudged its intentions and failed to detect an attack. Now, you generally don't see fact checks coming from people on the right or organizations, or mostly coming from people on the left who usually just bastardize anything they can so that just to uphold their ideology as opposed to like actually checking the facts and saying this is true and this isn't. Breitbart, on the other hand, when they have fact checks, it's fairly rare. But in this case, it's obviously important because Netanyahu is being blamed for something that he really had nothing to do with. So let's just go ahead and get into this. So the Israelis have been focusing on the war effort, but a few attempts to trade blame for the disaster have already emerged. On Sunday, so that would have been, if this was the 30th, that was a Monday, so that would have been on the 29th. Netanyahu deleted a tweet in which he insisted that he had not been informed by the security agencies about the imminent threat of a Hamas attack, which may have been true, but the timing of his attempt to evade blame risked disrupting military unity. He erased the tweet and apologized. Some opponents of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have been circulating a claim that he is responsible for the rise, or at least the strengthening, of Hamas as a counterweight to the Palestinian Authority. And here's an embedded tweet from Ian Bremmer, who has made a number of kind of egregiously false statements on this conflict. So I kind of take what he says with a grain of salt. What this embedded tweet here says is those who want to thwart the establishment of a Palestinian state should support the strengthening of Hamas and the transfer of money to Hamas. This is part of our strategy. And that's what Netanyahu supposedly said in 2019. Says this was a mistake of epic proportions. Hamas was and is a terrorist organization with critical support from Iran, from Russia, and before October 7th, from the Israeli prime minister. Says this helps explain why so many Israelis are united not just in destroying Hamas, but in also removing, Netanyahu from office. And let's see here. Didn't get ratioed or anything over it, but there you go. It continues, the article that is, says the above appears to be based on a quote from Al Jazeera, which is in turn based on a quote from Haaretz. Both outlets are applicably opposed to Netanyahu. Yet Haaretz is like a far left Israeli source, and Al Jazeera is Arabic, and they're not on the side of anybody in the West. Basically, it says it parallels other reports based on secondhand and hostile sources that lack real credibility. Because in fact, Netanyahu has been warning for years that Hamas is like ISIS, the so-called Islamic State or Daesh, which became notorious a decade ago for the astonishing brutality of its activities, many of which were filmed for circulation on social media. Says Hamas does not exist because of Israel. It is a Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, a transnational radical organization with branches across the world. It is true that when Hamas emerged in the 1980s, Israel saw it as a possible counterweight to the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or the PLO, which was a nationalist and terrorist organization. Israel mistakenly believed that a religious organization would be less militant and violent, and that policy was rapidly dropped. Hamas quickly established itself as a terrorist organization devoted to killing as many Israelis as possible, and in its charter, which is linked right here, says killing Jews worldwide as well. It is devoted to the vision of a fundamentalist Islamic State, and Israel soon saw it as a serious threat. The quote from 2019 dates to a debate at the time about whether Israel should allow Qatar to fund the Hamas government in Gaza, both to prevent a collapse of basic services and as a way to convince Hamas not to attack Israel with rockets. This was a deeply controversial issue within Israel. And there is no doubt that Netanyahu and the rest of the world, which was pressuring Israel to allow the funding, was wrong about Hamas's interest in governing Gaza rather than attempting to destroy Israel. It is possible, though not provable, that Netanyahu defended his decision to allow the Qatari funding by arguing that Hamas was a counterweight to the Palestinian Authority. But the divisions between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas were not created by Israel and did not need Israeli encouragement. Hamas ousted the Palestinian Authority from Gaza in 2007 in a violent coup that involved throwing rivals off rooftops. And unfortunately, one of the groups that is out there cheering for the Palestinians right now would have the same fate await them if they were to get their way. But, hey, chickens for KFC and whatever. Because moreover, Israel was hoping to deter terror by allowing the funding, not to encourage it. Still, it is clear that some on the far right of Israeli politics thought the internal Palestinian divisions could be exploited. Israelis have been sharing a 2015 clip showing Bezalel Smotrich, I don't know who that is, who is then on the fringes of politics but is now the finance minister. Okay, well, that's who he is. Arguing that Hamas should be supported as opposed to the Palestinian Authority for strategic reasons because Hamas would never be viewed by the international community as a legitimate government. It says, and it's a pretty long article here. It says, regardless, details are emerging that help explain the evident intelligence failure by Israel and the United States in failing to predict and prevent the devastating Hamas terror attack on October 7th, in which more than 1,400 people were brutally murdered. The Times of Israel notes that former Israeli cabinet minister Avigdor Lieberman, one of the most controversial figures in Israeli politics, sent Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu a secret memorandum in 2016 predicted an attack similar to what happened. Then it says in 2016, then Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman drafted an 11-page document warning of Hamas plans to burst through the Gaza border, overrun communities in southern Israel, staging massacres and taking hostages, excerpts show. The documents, each of which were published by the Yedioth Ahronoth Daily this morning, eerily presages many elements of the October 7th onslaught and indicates that Israeli officials have been aware for several years of the potential for such a Hamas assault, but apparently did not take the warning seriously enough. Well, no shit. 'Cause on Monday, the New York Times reported that Israeli signals intelligence that God, that sentence is weird. That Israeli signals intelligence had stopped monitoring Hamas's handheld radios because it seemed like a waste of time. It added, American spy agencies in recent years had largely stopped collecting intelligence on Hamas and its plans, believing the group was a regional threat that Israel was managing. Well, October 7th certainly proved that wrong, so I think we need to go back to monitoring these folks. There's international pressure on Israel to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza also overlooked the fact that Hamas exploited such efforts to build its own power and its terror capabilities, especially its rocket arsenal and its network of underground tunnels. And when Netanyahu did warn the United Nations in 2014 that when it comes to their ultimate goals, Hamas is ISIS and ISIS is Hamas, few paid attention. And Netanyahu, as well as the military establishment that opposed him, let down their guard. So, yeah, it doesn't seem like it was Netanyahu that created Hamas. So we can just throw away that line of thinking. And since this whole thing started, I haven't seen much of this lately. I did see it at the like the beginning of all this happening because everyone's eager to blame him for everything because of course they are. So I think it's pretty safe to say that he is not responsible for this. So let me know what you think in the comments below about this. Do you agree that he is or is not responsible for this? And let me know why. Uh, Thanks for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.